Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Common Room Go-to-Market Heroes Live, where we are helping you make sense of what people are talking about today, especially in the age of AI, where everyone is releasing their latest Claude cowork, just replaced my outreach team or my 48-step workflow. If anyone has commented on those posts, I'm watching you and I'm ashamed. Unless if you got something actually valuable. I would love to hear where everyone is tuning in from. Drop it in the chat. I'm over in Ontario, Canada. You might get some O's and ums and ahs as I'm talking. I try to hide it, but I never can for my American folks. Drop it in the chat. Let's hear where you're tuning in from. Hopefully it's not as rainy as it is today for me. It's a little bit gloomy, but better than snow. As I say, people in NYC, you probably know that as well. Today, we are talking about go-to-market in the age of AI, very broad topic, but more specifically oriented around how you can actually create leverage in this world of AI and not just this, I'm going to create content with AI, because we've all heard about that use case. We want to get into the actual practical use cases in go-to-market. So we're going to be digging into that today, and we have two great experts today joining me soon here. Taft Love, who is the co-founder or the founder and CEO of Iceberg RevOps, and Rosalyn Santa Elena, who is an in-house VP of RevOps at SingleStore, and then also the founder of the RevOps Collective. So I'll have them join me on stage now. I'll let them do a bit more of a formal introduction about what they're working on and their relevancy for today's conversation, because these are practitioners that are in the role and or helping people in the role. So Rosalyn, I'd love to hear from you first. Tell me more about what you're doing today and where you're doing it and what you're hearing in them.
Yeah, so I'm Rosalyn Santa Elena. As you mentioned, I'm the VP of Go-to-Market Operations at SingleStore. I've been there about a year and a half. Prior to that, I was doing some consulting work and coaching of RevOps professionals, because we know that who couldn't use some guidance and some ops therapy from other RevOps leaders. So I've been doing that. And I've been in the go-to-market space, I guess, leading teams a little over 20 years now. So I've kind of seen, I would like to tell people, I've just seen a lot of the good and the bad and a little bit of the ugly of operations, and super excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. And Taft, I know you from other interactions. I'd love to hear more about you and what you're working on today, because I know you're working across multiple clients.
Yeah, you got it. Hi, everybody. I'm Taft. As Will said, I'm the CEO at Iceberg. I am a detective turned federal agent turned startup guy years ago. I've got about half of Rosalyn's experience here. I built sales and ops teams at PandaDoc and Smart Recruiters, and then later at Dropbox, and now run consultancy. So as Will mentioned, we spread across a lot of clients and helping growth stage startups with RevOps as a service. And yeah, working on lots of things every day. Get to see every corner of ops all the time.
I love that, the background of being a detective and working in the force. I can only imagine, especially nowadays, you're having hard conversations where you both need to ask the hard questions, but also challenge maybe a strong-headed VP of sales. And so where I wanted to kick things off here is, unfortunately, it's not April Fool's, but I do have a joke for you all. What is your favorite 48-step workflow that you did see out on LinkedIn? Like, are people actually seeing value from that? Like, I've commented on some of these when they were first coming out. If you've seen one, pop it in the chat, and because I'm totally skeptical. I've been burned and I've just been spammed when I've been reaching out, but I don't want to rag on them too much. Rosalind, Taft, have you seen anything that's actually useful? And if so,
well, I
process, and I'll send it to you.
Okay. Yes, I have to comment that. And now I'm wondering if people are A/B testing which comment bait works the best.
Sorry, go ahead, Rosalyn.
I was just going to say, you lost me at 48 step. At that point, I was like, yeah, probably not the best workflow.
And that's the part of the crux of our conversation today, where there is this something very interesting about complexity. If we see this 48-step workflow on the feed, that piques our interest because we go, well, that sounds like it's getting a lot done with all those steps. When in reality, the simplicity of, the thought I've always had is like the best technology runs in the background. All the solutions, all the workflows, you probably shouldn't really even notice it, that it's doing these different things. And so the complexity to reach your goal isn't always going to be the case. But I'm curious your general thoughts on where there's that fine line of, well, we as RevOps, we do need to focus on all the steps that happen. And maybe there is 48 steps, but maybe the sales rep doesn't need to interface with that and be blown away with it. How do you balance that idea of complexity while also making things seamless for your reps? And I think back, I'll plant the seed here of when I was a rep, I was submitting tickets to RevOps to, have a report made or, have a new list created or what have you. And obviously those things need to happen, but where do you find that balance? And Rosalyn, you're in the seat in the organization. I'm curious how you're navigating that to partner closely with the go-to-market teams and make the experience seamless.
Yeah, I was going to say it's always a delicate balance, right? Between, even if you think about gathering data, right? A balance between, hey, the data we need to be able to actually drive informed decisions and have the insights that we need versus, okay, the data that we need, how much of that needs to be gathered from a rep, right? Or from a call. And so I think, obviously we're talking a lot about AI today. So, I think that's made huge strides for us as RevOps professionals to be able to better balance, I think, the two things, because now there's just so much, it's not just automation, it's not just clicks, right? It's about actually being able to extract all of the quality information we need from just a natural sales process, right? And we've talked about transcribing calls and being able to, just understand conversations, as well as just data that we have existing in our existing systems. So I think it's made it a lot easier for RevOps to kind of do that, kind of have that balance. But it's also, which I'm sure we'll probably dive into, it's also introduced a number of new challenges, I think, for us. One of the things I would just say about the user experience is somebody I had met long time ago had told me, one of the most important things for us is also to sit with the users, right? And actually shadow, how do they actually work? Because I think from an ops perspective, we think we know how they should be working, but unless you've actually sat down with your reps and watched how they work, what that actual flow looks like, you're not going to be able to design a good process for them to follow, at least not one that they will follow and adopt.
Nice. As a previous seller and someone who used to try and enable sellers to use the data I was giving them, I know that all too well. Oh, of course, it sounds great on paper. They can do this and that. Of course, they're going to do it. Yeah. Sorry to any sales reps that are on the session today, but I empathize with you all because you have so much to do as reps. And so finding that unified experience where it's not RevOps in a box, go-to-market in a box, it needs to be together. That resonates with me, especially now as I'm going about sales as well. Taft, what are you seeing across the client work that you have in terms of either requests that clients have for leveraging AI or where you're typically recommending? And we'll get into more specific use cases, but generally speaking, what's constantly the thing that people are thinking about from what you're seeing in your interactions?
I see a lot of people wanting to focus on top of funnel, using AI for outbound, for various go-to-market motions. I'm actively trying to dissuade people from overusing AI for those use cases. I think because it's just so noisy in the outbound world right now that more AI is not actually how you interrupt the patterns that are stopping people from responding to emails, things like that. Where I think AI shines, and some of the requests I'm getting and the ones I like to fulfill are ones that are taking unstructured information and making it structured. So my sort of macro point of view here is the biggest thing stopping AI from being leveraged a lot more, and I think something that's going to gate us for a while, is AI is now being slapped on top of decades of data that is structured poorly and incompletely by humans. And then whatever you give the AI is the ground truth to the AI, and it's working with incomplete or inaccurate data. And of course, the outputs are disappointing. And so what I'm trying to build with our clients and internally at Iceberg is the idea that we need to incorporate AI into the loop earlier. AI needs to be distilling and structuring information into the systems that AI later uses to understand what's happening in your world. And so those are the use cases I like. Gong is a great example of a company that's kind of ahead of their time in taking all of your calls, unstructured data, and structuring it. So anything along those lines, I like to dive into, because it's solving a gate that a lot of people don't realize exists in the way of really getting a lot of mileage out of AI.
Nice. I got a lot of questions around, the fundamental layer that you need to build, and you will all have a sneak peek if you stay to the end. The final 15 minutes, we're going to show you something upcoming, and both Rosalyn and Taft haven't seen this before, so they're going to be seeing it for the first time as well. And I will not plant any more seeds other than it's related. Now, what I do want to dive into is I'd love to, for the audience, and I'll ask the audience here as well, structure the different functions that we can say with confidence AI can absolutely help in this function. And then I'd love to do the cautionary, we should do a bit more exploration on this specific function, because although it sounds great in theory and maybe there's some good content around it, we don't know if it's there yet. So what's actually working, and where there's a vetted kind of RevOps approved way of going to market while using AI, and then that cautionary, we don't know yet. So in the chat, everyone, I'd love to hear where you're using AI. Where are you applying it? What function? Is it outbound? Is it the call intelligence? Is it the follow-up? Is it your revenue intelligence in terms of mapping your pipeline and getting a better sense there? I'd love to hear more from you. And Rosalyn, I'm curious where you're implementing specifically today, starting from a function standpoint, and then I'd love to actually even dig into even some step-by-step or what your workflow might be, if you're willing to share it. But what functions in general are you seeing actual practical success in leveraging AI and go-to-market?
Yeah, I think definitely, as Taft kind of touched on the inbound piece, right? And making sure that we have not just the execution of lead routing, right, and dynamic routing and, kind of speed to lead, if you will, but more of the, bringing together the right signals and being able to do a lot better lead scoring from an inbound perspective, but also from a sales, I guess what I would say, sales execution perspective. I think that's where we're seeing the most. I think that was probably the leading area that we first led with AI, right? Because of the calls and the transcriptions and things like that, and just the natural fit for eliminating some of those manual key, kind of key entry or data entry fields in the CRM, being able to extract that information. Those were kind of the very obvious, I think, use cases initially. And then we sort of moved into, give me a kind of a private analyst, right? Somebody who sits with me that I can just ask questions about the data, right? I think that was a very easy win to say, yeah, we should be asking, how many deals do I have in the funnel? How many are at this stage? And start to kind of, that's kind of how I think we started touching on leveraging AI. But I think that go to market, we are always sort of ahead of the game from everybody else, I think, in the company. And that's probably why it's such a hot topic for RevOps, because everyone feels like we should be leading with AI all the time. And we always, feel behind because we hear everybody else talking about it. We're like, oh, we must not be doing all the right things. But I do think that we're, doing the low-hanging fruit, the easy things, right? Repetitive tasks, data entry, bubbling up information, being able to ask questions. But now we're sort of moving into the more in-depth, more comprehensive use of AI, which I think go-to-market has a lot of really good use cases, and I'm happy to maybe we could talk about it more, but I'd love to kind of hear what Taft thinks too.
I want to challenge the premise of the question a little bit, because I think looking at functions is too wide. And I wrote something about this the other day. Even looking at jobs is too wide scope for talking about what AI can and can't do. AI is not replacing functions or jobs. AI is replacing jobs to do. So the way I like to think of it, my framework is you have to break roles and jobs down into their component parts and look for the parts that are likely to be replaceable or assisted well by AI. And I think that's the frame for having like a productive conversation here. So one of them is distilling unstructured data into structured data. The one that's really interesting to me is one Rosalyn just touched on, analysis. And the biggest weakness of dashboards is that you can build the world's best, most interesting dashboards, but then you have to go build the discipline muscle to review them and take action based on what the dashboards are telling you. And this is a place where AI really shines because it can hold lots of context and instructions and alert you to things. So I build internal products for Iceberg. The way I'm flexing this muscle is building stuff for us to use as consultants and making our consulting practice stronger by finding the jobs to do that really suck for our team or that we're not good at and incorporating AI into them. And one of them is we use Asana, and it is really hard for a human to look across all of Asana and understand how things are going. And we have reports, and I use Metabase, and I can build all kinds of cool stuff, but then I get busy and don't remember to go look at it. And it was 2 days ago that a thing happened I wish I had been paying attention to in the moment. And gosh, I would have avoided a fire if I had known right then. And so something as simple as like an agent on a cron job can superpower dashboards for you. And it becomes a push mechanism, like showing you when things are missing. So analysis is a good one. Another one, this is how I really like using AI, Claude specifically. They're building CLI connections into all the apps that RevOps teams use. So instead of when I get an email alert from a client's Salesforce, and of course we have permission to leverage Claude in these instances, we don't go rogue, but I'll take an email alert saying that a flow has broken 32 times in the last 5 minutes. Oh my God, what's wrong? Instead of calling Madison, our superstar Salesforce admin and developer, and letting her spend the next hour combing through flows, I screenshot it, go to Claude, log in through CLI and say, go check the XML. Why is this happening? 90 seconds later, here's why. This person made this change and now it's breaking this thing. You have two options. Do you want me to change the flow or do you want me to undo what they did? And it's incredible. Like those are the places where AI is really earning its keep.
In the chat, Matt had shared that he's using it for revenue enablement to be more proactive, and that I think is the title of this talk is related to leverage. And when we think about leverage, one of the core theses that we have at Common Room is there shouldn't be roadblocks or gatekeepers to leverage. And that's where, Rosalyn, when you were talking about the unification and like really sitting with them and understanding how they work and how you can meet them where they work, and Taft, as you're talking about, like, this is basically what you mentioned is being proactive, like Matt's saying here, that allows you to really focus in on outcomes, honestly. Whereas there is a narrative in this space that, again, I was making the joke that it's this multi-step workflow that, looks all crazy. There's this thing called a specialist trap where if you are, GTM engineering inherently isn't wrong, but it's now its own function that requires its own training. And if that's its own specialized role, then if they become another gatekeeper in the organization for the leverage, then Rosalyn, that steps them away from getting closer to that alignment with the sales team or the go-to-market team at large. And so I'd love to bridge that into where's it cautionary? What have you maybe tried and then you saw it fail, or you just didn't see the results that you wanted to, and it's, AI is just quite not there yet. And it could be where people are saying, well, it is there, and download my course or what have you. What comes to mind as like, stay cautioned about using it over here? What comes to mind?
Yeah, I think first I want to make a comment about this go-to-market engineer role. just because I would be remiss not to. Somebody was asking me, what do you think about this role? And I'm like, oh, is it just the newest, the new shiny thing, right? Like RevOps was 6 years ago or whatever, right? Who knows? But I guess in 6 years, we'll have that conversation, or maybe in 5 years, and see where that role went. But I mean, I think with any role, or any approach to anything you're doing with AI, I mean, at the end of the day, we've got to get back to the basics, right? Around, there's so many things that you're able to do, but where I think it kind of becomes where it maybe not leveraged as well, or where, as you mentioned, I missed the mark, is really if you don't have the basis of, what are we trying to drive, right? At the end of the day, we start going, oh, this is really cool. And they start going down a path of building something that maybe is not even what you really need. And so always focused on anything we do, right, is focused on what is the outcome that we're trying to drive? What are those objectives, right? What's our strategy to get there? And then focus a lot on, just the problem, right? Because we tend to solution quickly too. We're like, oh, we could do this, but a lot of times it's, should we be doing that, right? Yes, we could probably do that, but should we do that? And is that really going to solve the problem that we have? And then I also think that we tend to overcomplicate things. A lot of times we end up, maybe it's a simple workflow, an MVP kind of version that you just need to solve the problem. But then we spend too much time building something super comprehensive that, as we know in this day and age, is going to change, right? In a week and 30 days, it's going to change. And then you have to go back and rebuild. So I think anything in ops, I think we think about being iterative, right? And so I don't think this is any different with this role too, is thinking about how do we leverage what we want to build based on what it is we need today, but obviously with an eye on scale, but making sure that we're just not over engineering everything, right? Because we get into that trap. Oh, this would be cool to have, and this would be cool to have. And then you're leaving, 10 things that you're supposed to be working on because you're working on something and likely over engineer it and maybe don't need it to be that comprehensive.
Nice. I like that. Every idea is a good idea until it comes time to execute and then report on the results. I know many of folks in my network that have many good ideas, but in practice, they don't actually produce those results. So I'm curious, Rosalyn, if you have a take on what Jen asked here. It's a bit more broad in the sense of like, what is specifically helping to work smarter, not harder? I'd love to hear if you have a story of, again, either something you've heard in your network or something you've implemented yourself directly around, okay, so our thesis was this was the idea, but this was the problem and the expected outcome. I'm curious if anything comes to mind, even if it's like a sentiment of, yeah, the sales team is spending less time on this, or our team is spending less time on it. What story comes to mind?
Yeah, I think about, because sales is sort of the first layer, and I don't know if I'm doing a proper job of this in today's world, but this is kind of like what I would envision. Again, do as I say, not as I do. But I think on the sales execution part, we talked a lot about it's ahead of the game because of transcriptions and call recording and needing. I think there's such a huge need, so it pushes innovation, right? But we talked a little bit about just being able to pull the right data in and bubble up insights, right? So there's kind of the step of, okay, let's get the data into the systems that we need. Then there's the bubbling up the insights and the flags of, hey, something's broken. Like Taft was mentioning about, on something for one of his clients, right? Something broke in a flow. But really what we should be caring about is like next best action, right? I always talk about that because it's great to have the insights, but if you don't do anything with it, right, kind of to Taft's point, then it's really meaningless. And so I think putting it into practice, but that's not easy. But that's where I think AI, the question kind of came up is, I think that's where AI is really powerful, right? It's not just, hey, this is a problem, but this is what you should do about it. And I can help you execute that, on that. Maybe it's sending an email, or it's, replying a certain way, or sending some piece of content or some information to a potential client. But it can actually bring all of that together in an email, in a proposal, in a white paper, and just send, right? And you'll be able to obviously put the human touch on that and adjust it, but that saves hours of time because now they're bringing in all the information, putting it in a format that's, authentic to you and your company, and then being able to share that. And that brings speed, right? Because that means better discipline, right? More accurate information. It's aligned with your messaging, and just much better follow-up and faster follow-up for a client. So
nice. Yeah. And especially I'm hearing many themes. It's like the context of the data, the surfacing of the data in real time, and then also just the organization of that information. Like if we think about, to Jen's question of being more prescriptive on a pipeline call with one of your leaders, to be able to have all that at the ready, like you're busy selling. If you're a seller, it's like you don't probably want to put that together. Like you want to have the basics there, and ideally, most of it is organized automatically. But the ability for AI to kind of get you an hour's worth of saved time, like you can do that time now spent on prospecting. Jen, you had a second question. I'd love to bring you up on stage. There should be a raise hand button either at the bottom or on the left side. I'm monitoring it right now. We'll bring you up because you got a direct question for Taft. I see you here. There you go. You should be able to come off mute. Hey, Jen, how's it going?
Oh, muted. There
you go.
Okay, sure.
All right, thank you. So Taft, and then Rosalyn, I actually have another question for you if you don't mind, but trying to understand a little bit more about how you're getting that clean data when someone says they want to implement AI, but it's a mess and we have to clean the closet before you're actually
Let me give you a specific example because it's a big question, and I don't have the full answer here because I have not cracked the code on cleaning up a bunch of historical data with or without AI. The decision I made internally was I built a tool we use internally that listens to calls and watches our Slack channels and looks at certain emails that meet certain filters. And it essentially watches all of our client surfaces and then extracts commitments when we say we're going to do something, and moves them into Asana for us and adds a bunch of context. And what I realized is I'm not going to, and I can't spend time cleaning up 7 years worth of data. And so I decided I'm going to flip the switch on this thing once I'm ready, and I believe in it and it works well. And with a human in the loop, we're going to let it create all of our data moving forward. And there will be a period when part of its job is understanding that this thing we talked about in a call is actually related to this task from 2 months ago, and it is updating old stuff. But a lot of our data is going to remain messy, and I am not going to commit to cleaning it up. And what I am going to do is make sure starting today, everything is clean and filled out. And even in a month, we've seen this thing go from just creating tasks for us to getting really, really smart and answering really in-depth questions you would expect a chief of staff to know, because the loop exists and everything is written by AI and then approved by a human. So that's my answer. Like it's not as satisfying as here's a way to go clean up your 20 years of historical data, but kind of setting a starting point and making sure everything is clean thereafter is working well for us.
Yeah, and I think if you knew, sorry, go ahead, Will.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you crack that code, let me know, because I want to become a millionaire with you and make a lot of money for that.
So what I was about to jump in and say, I was smiling big there because you should absolutely stay to the end. I know I teased it out, but like a lot of the challenges that you just described, I don't know if it's exactly doing everything that you're doing today, Taft, but you all will want to see that. If that is a challenge today, then we definitely got something for you. Rosalyn, I'd love to move on to the question for you from Jen. Jen, do you have additional context on your question there for Rosalyn?
Yeah, so I straddle RevOps and enablement, and I just had a leader come to us, our chief technology, AI technology officer, had come asking, hey, what's your AI strategy for enablement? Same thing for RevOps, sales ops, and how do you answer that without the background? Like, what background do you say, well, I need this to answer that? Or what have you done in that scenario?
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, and actually it's funny that you say that because Matt Cohen, who is my enablement partner, is on this call. So we may want to bring him on stage if he's open to it. But in terms of kind of how we're doing in practice, um, fortunately for us, we're an AI first company, right? We're in the enterprise AI data space. And so everything is always think AI first, right? Everything is AI first. Can we build before we buy? Can we use automation instead of hiring another headcount? Right? There's all of the questions, and it's always, how are we're going to do this with AI? I would say probably, somebody likes that take, kind of the AI first. I got some support. But I think that for me, if somebody comes to me and say, "Hey, what's our strategy?" A lot of it is, around AI first, right? Again, thinking about it first. So before we do anything, it's how do we leverage AI? And if they're asking us, hey, how are you using it, right? We have some of those use cases to share, but it's ongoing, right? For everybody, it's constantly iterating, it's constantly learning, and I would say it's changing, right, all of the time. So probably if you ask me today, it's one answer. And if you ask me even at the same time, I guess if you ask me like a month from now, I'd probably still say the same thing, that we're still iterating, we're improving. Here's a couple new use cases we've tried, and maybe some of the things that have worked really well. And some that were like, okay, that just wasn't worth the time to go automate. And we did it old school way. Right.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's important because one of the things I found is not just try before you buy, but really try and run through some of the use cases in some of the AI platforms or AI pieces. And I think that that's something that I've taken away with AI coming out. Used to just kind of test a platform and that was it, and say, okay, we like it. It looks really good in this demo. But now really getting dirty and getting your hands on it is really helpful to see the power of AI. Thank you both for that. Thanks, Will.
Thank you, Jen. Matt, I'll bring you on stage as well. And my question that we'll dig into some like revenue enablement workflows. I can't wait to hear your take on this. And we don't need to throw anyone under the bus if there is like anything going on. But I'm curious around the space of like, okay, your VP of sales comes to you and says, we need to do more with AI. Or Taft, I know you write about this often, where you get like this, like, we want this and you're going to figure it out. And that's probably the case across so many RevOps teams. What's the, like, we kind of covered this already, but like, Taft, what's your take on how you would respond to that? And then Matt, I'd love to dig into if you're coming across this as well, especially working with sellers where like maybe they're AI aware and they're making requests to you as well. But yeah, Taft, how do you respond to that VP of sales or the CRO that says, we need to implement this, now help us do it? What are your like, okay, well, step one or step zero is this?
So I'm going to kind of parrot in slightly different words something Rosalyn said earlier, because I think it's worth calling out again. One thing that has not changed in ops and is more important than ever is having an eye toward the outcomes you're looking to achieve. The more people who are able to do more things, the more likely you're going to get tech sprawl and more complex stuff than you actually need, and debt, operational debt. And so step one is always try to understand what we're solving for. And having a framework is more important now than ever. When new clients come to us, something I often need to explain is, look, we're too expensive to be ticket takers. Like, you're just burning money. Go hire an offshore team if you just want somebody to do the things you've decided need to be done. And second, your first ops hire at a startup, you're in real danger of just accelerating the things that you want them to fix because you hire a ticket taker. And so one is really understand what needs to be done. But then the second, once you've established that like this is a thing that needs to be done, it is aligned with an outcome we want to achieve, and all of those sort of framework checkboxes, I don't think much has changed other than you lay out the jobs to be done and you look at each one and decide which one may be good to hand to AI. And so if a process involves filling in fields in Salesforce, based on data that exists somewhere else, probably a time to say, hey, time out, is there an AI use case here? Moving data and structuring data. I know I keep saying that, but that's the one place AI really shines. And that's kind of the game plan for anything AI. Lay out the jobs to be done, look for the ones that are AI-able, and then experiment and test with just those. Get really narrow on the jobs to be done that you want to hand off. Where people make mistakes is they try to slap AI generally on an entire process or an entire goal, and that's where you end up talking to Claude for 2 days, building something that doesn't actually do what you think it does, and then RevOps wants to get you fired because you just broke everything and created a bunch of bad data. So anyway, that's my sort of framework.
Nice. What resonates with me there is like, one, pushing back and saying, well, what are we actually trying to achieve and how do we think we're going to achieve it? And two, it makes me think of the very large promises of just use this AI tool to build you more pipeline and it's gonna be magic. And of course that's marketing speak, but it clearly influences the people that are in like leadership positions because they have that pain. But as RevOps teams need to be able to push back and give them the hard questions, like you mentioned. Matt, I'm curious for, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Well, I was just going to just add on to what Taft said. I think that for ops, it's like always that ruthless prioritization is always key. Now it's even more so. It's even more important. And I think a lot of times it's, even though we might be able to do it or we can do it, the question is, should we be doing it, right? I think that's the part that we kind of get into this, we could end up in an area that we really don't want to be, right? And again, simple MVP first, understanding what that problem is we're trying to solve. Let's solve that problem, but then look at scale, like what other things can we solve, but just not try to, as they say, boil the ocean, right? Because now just because we can, again, maybe we shouldn't.
Nice.
Yeah.
With that, I'm curious what comes to mind. Matt, you're a partner in crime, and you, Rosalyn, what have you built, or maybe even like a request that came in and you did run through this process where you're like, okay, well, what are we trying to achieve? And then I'm curious how you worked together to solve that. What like recent project or win comes to mind?
And this is going to be trademarked. So if anybody wants to use it, Matt and I will be collecting royalties on the back end.
We heard it here. We heard it here first. Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on. We just had our SKO actually, so this is really timely. And one of the things I touched on in our presentation was basically this idea of the agentic sales process. And so we had this vision where, and we, just like everyone else, were getting those questions of what's our strategy to leverage AI. And, I wanted to take a step back, like I said in my chat, and think of the go-to-market priorities holistically and aligned to, how is the CRO thinking about these gaps? And so what we did is we took a holistic view rather than just trying to build, GPTs or agents for specific parts of the workflow. That is the tactical work involved. But we tried to take a step back and go, where are the most important gaps in our buyer journey in alignment to our sales process where we lack that operationalization? And what we saw was we had, to Rosalyn's point earlier, we had a lot of the excitement initially was all top of funnel. Like there's so much you can do when it comes to discovery and qualification and, ICP fit. And we're still building some things like that, to be sure. But where we saw some additional opportunity is how do we help cross-functional handoffs? How do we help avoid rediscovery once we get to the point of handoff to CS? How do we support product implementation? So one of the reasons this tied in so perfectly for us at SingleStore, and this is why it's kind of drinking our own champagne. We talk about being the performance for enterprise AI, so we try to use AI really well at SingleStore. Was our head of product was up on stage talking about how we're building agents for our customers, and so it was this kind of interesting moment where there was this overlap in what we ourselves need internally, what our reps need, what they reach out to me as their biggest pains. And then one of the things, the last thing I'll say is one of the roles I take really seriously in enablement is I've actually been under ops a couple times at different organizations. And I think it fits really well for a number of reasons, because I just have a very operational mindset, but also I kind of bring that perspective that Rosalyn mentioned is sometimes lacking in making these decisions, because I have my finger on the pulse of what the field is dealing with. So I try to think of myself as kind of the voice of sales when we're talking about what these use cases need to be. The one we just built is this account intelligence kit that basically reviews the biggest pains and tech patterns on priority accounts. And now we're working on another agent that will kind of help qualify pain once they start discovery as well. That's what's top of mind.
Very cool. Rosalyn, any additional color to add on the projects that Matt's been working on?
No, it's really incredible kind of being able to see what we can actually do. And what I love about the way Matt's approaching it is a user, right? Kind of out, looking at from a user perspective, what's most helpful and what some of those gaps are, but also keeping an eye on, okay, what can we, that balance that you mentioned, I think one of your very first questions, Will, was around the balance for users, right? How much is too much for them? And and Matt's really good about, balancing that and understanding like what can a rep actually digest that's helpful, what are things that maybe are not as helpful that we don't want to introduce them to, and we kind of do it in bite-sized pieces too. So yeah, it's been really fun.
Nice.
Painful,
That
but
sounds
fun.
yes. But it sounds like you're getting a positive sentiment from sales reps as well and the go-to-market team. And I mean, I've always thought that the best kind of enablement is operationally sound. Plus, it does create that leverage, and it's going back to how I started. It needs to kind of operate in the back end, almost like where it doesn't even feel like it's a process. I'm sure there's process elements, but it's so smooth and so aligned with the outcomes as we've been talking about that. Even if the seller is busy, they want to do it because they know that it's aligned to their outcomes. And honestly, that's in my mind the best kind of enablement is like, if you can get a seller to click a button or do something, then you're winning, because they are so hard to enable because they very much so protect their time. So kudos to you, Matt.
I could just add one anecdote to that, Will, that you reminded me of. So these territory attack plans that we rolled out at SKO, it was really interesting, an example of what you just mentioned, because, for the past year, we were trying to, as always, really fully leverage our tools and optimize our investment in our tech. And so I spent a lot of time building these ideal workflows for the reps in the context of prospecting. We made some headway, but then now this year that it was in the context of their priority accounts that are going to make them the most money, it was like all of a sudden everybody was using every tool, super interested in learning all the finer points of the tools. And it was just, it was a perfect example of that.
Nice. That sounds like the gold standard. I love it. Any other color to add, Matt? I just got another question come in, but yeah, anything else you wanted to leave for the audience?
No, all good. Thank you for having me on, though. I'm glad I could be a special guest.
Yeah.
Thanks for jumping on, Matt. I knew that'd be super helpful to share what we've been doing.
Sweet. So we had a question from John. John would like to come up on stage. John mentioned, I think it is also worth mentioning that ownership of these solutions is often overlooked. Expectations are, like you all have said, magic. So John, come on stage. Would love to hear what's inspiring that for you. Are you getting that request, or, and of course you can ask Taft and Rosalyn just how that you can go about that if so, but I'm curious what inspires your question.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Will. Appreciate the floor. And Taft, already had the pleasure of talking with you. Great to see you again. And Rosalyn, thank you for your time. As far as what really inspired that, it's especially my focus with what I do revolves around CRMs. And I think that what inspired that comment was like, again, a pattern that I think worth naming. When clients come to us with a business problem, the solution they walk in with is almost always shaped by brands they already know, like Salesforce, HubSpot, Gong, Microsoft Copilot, big names. And now AI is in the mix. We're talking about these solutions like we're talking about our favorite sports teams. Oh, did you see the game last night? Oh, we won. Not to discredit that, but what's actually happening, I think, is that the problem gets reversed engineered to fit the tool that they've already heard of, rather than the tool being chosen to fix the problem. And the market is full of these awesome solutions that could be lighter, faster to deploy, and sometimes better at the specific job they're looking for. So it's also a matter of just there's hundreds of different tools out there to solve these problems. So how do these customers find the right one is the next question, right?
So Taft, I'm curious your take on that, where it's like similar to the CRO or the VP of sales coming in saying, we want the magic. There's this tool, or we just bought this tool. Now go do it. I know you mentioned, well, if you want someone to just like click the buttons, then we're not the shop for you, because we're going to focus on how you can strategically leverage it. But what's like, I guess, an analogy that you like to use, and maybe this could be given to people to be like, okay, use this analogy, tell this story, or talk about this framework that they can then say, well, I hear you, I want the magic too. Let's go through this together, or let's think about it in this way. What comes to mind for you to help navigate that?
Two things come to mind. These are both tactical, but maybe helpful to operators out there who are running into this. So one is starting with the end in mind. A lot of times people will come to you with the thing they want you to do, and I think you have to make it exceptionally clear to people that your goal is to create the experience they want, because that's a frame we use at Iceberg. We create client experiences, internal and external clients. I view our consultants as my clients when I'm building things. And so what is the experience we want to create? And I want to work backwards from that. Part of that conversation is reminding them that tools are not strategies, and you cannot plug a tool into a business problem. Tools may be part of a strategy, but they are not a strategy. And then the other one, this is getting really tactical, but it's been really quite helpful for me, is walking someone to the logical conclusion of the thing they're asking for. Because I spent years as an operator, an aggressively mediocre junior operator, kind of leaning on my resume to tell them no. And that doesn't work. Nobody cares that you think you know the answer. They think they know the answer. The only way to, in my mind, to get people to the place where you need them to be is, and to also demonstrate that you know what the hell you're talking about, is walk them to the logical conclusion. Okay, so I add that field. What happens when somebody does this? And watch. And they'll say, well, we'll tell people don't do that. Do you think people might do it? Yeah. And that's where you can actually like guide people to a place where then they're looking to you for some direction. And it's a silly little tactical thing, but if you can't do that, then you might not actually know enough to stop them. And so that's tactically where I like to take those conversations. And I'll pause there. I could go on for days, but those are my quick takeaways.
Nice. Rosalyn, any additional color to add on like how you would tactically help out? I love frameworks, acronyms, analogies. What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, no, for me, I think what kind of Taft talked about, and you saw John and I both kind of smiling and laughing, because it's trying to guide, trying to get the person to your answer, right? Basically to your outcome. Yeah, no, I don't think I have anything to add there.
Nice. The like thought I'll leave people with is, hey, that sounds a lot like sales. You guide them with the right questions to the outcome that you know to be right, but they just need to realize. So, always be selling is not just for the movies. It is a reality that we all face. So, John, great question. We're going to move on to our next segment. Thank you so much for coming up on stage and for spurring the conversation on. I'm going to move you off here. And then we have Kyle from the Common Room team who will join us in just about 30 seconds or so. And Kyle's going to show us something that the market has not seen, maybe some beta customers for Common Room. But what we talked about today was around one, enabling the use of AI in a structured fashion, where if you're using bad data, then it's just going to scale more bad data and more bad stuff and more bad outcomes. We also talked about creating leverage instead of simply just becoming a bottleneck, and data is a huge bottleneck, especially if you're still having to weed through what is the information, let's contextualize it. So Kyle, come on stage, hit that green button in the bottom right and show us what you got. And again, this is, I'm pretty sure it's approved to be shown, but you all are seeing this for the first time live. So for everyone who has stayed on, thank you. And this is your treat. Kyle, take it away for Data Agent.
Yeah, long-time listener, first-time caller. So thanks for having me here. I'll say, Taft, what you said resonated as well when you mentioned you have years of bad data that you've been trying to clean up, and it gets to the point where sometimes you just kind of find a part where you have good data moving forward, you hope, and you let the rest just sit there and you just let it pile up and you try to forget about it and things like that. And when you mentioned Rosalyn, this is something we built, and I'll show you in a second, is we sat with our customers here on the ops side. So when you mentioned like when you're building things, you need to actually understand the user, sit with them and how things work. We did that, and that's why we had a long beta for this to show everybody and build what they had in mind as well, so that we can make sure that we're getting it right. And so the problem that we're solving here is bad data when it comes to CRM, to make sure that we're helping reps be efficient. Because for you all as operators and RevOps teams, trying to clean that up forever, never fun, really hard. We've heard a lot of people just try to do things like one by one, go manually through it. Some try to put it into Claude or ChatGPT and hope it gets things right and doesn't hallucinate. And it's a really tough problem to solve that no one's really fully solved just yet. And so what we want to do is, as I share my entire screen so everyone can see everything, which is good. There we go. Is we built something that right now it's in beta, and in 2 days or tomorrow, it goes general availability. So we're launching it tomorrow next week, which we're really excited about, that we're calling the Data Agent. And so this also goes back, Rosalyn, when you mentioned, or maybe it was you, Taft, you need to build the right things. And you don't just try to say, like, let's build stuff and keep building if it doesn't solve for like what we're actually trying to figure out. So we want to make sure that we started from scratch here. And what we think about is, how do we clean up bad data? And so I'm sure not only you, Taft, you have years worth of bad data, but I'm sure, Rosalyn, maybe in your CRM, there probably isn't. Not everything's 100% clean, because I don't think everyone has 100% clean data, unless you're the first.
Yeah. Our Salesforce instance is over 10 years old, and I inherited it 18 months ago. So you can imagine. I'll let you guys do the math.
I'm triggered.
That's really fun. Yeah. Just waking up in cold sweats with all those duplicates and BDRs messaging like, why is this data so bad? Like, this person doesn't work here anymore. Why is this wrong?
Oh my goodness.
So what we're doing, oh man. And so what we're doing is, and the cool thing here is because we built agents on agents for us, because we have our own AI model that we built to do things like identity resolution. So with my dummy data, I have a good example here of, let's say, Ryan, or actually he's a pretty bad example. So we have, if they have multiple records and multiple profiles and different things going on, our job is to flag that. And so we can start to do things with these different records. We can show you who you have, if anyone's outdated, if there's any duplicates as contacts, and also duplicate accounts. And our goal is to make sure we're cleaning this up as much as we can with you in control. So I can take an example like Neil here as an outdated contact, 3 different records with my dummy data that they have in Salesforce. And so that's pretty common. They've changed jobs. Maybe they came in from a different event and they got created on accident and things slipped through the cracks. And we don't want to have you go one by one manually cleaning that up. And so our goal here is to filter these up for you, where we show you all the outdated duplicates as well. And what's really cool is, coming out tomorrow and Monday, is that we're going to give it a little bit of a facelift to give you a little bit better of a RevOps view, where it's going to be its own separate thing. And we'll be able to show you what's going on with all these outdated contacts, these duplicates. But more important, it's that execution. So I think, Taft, you mentioned like there's a part where like we have AI running, but also there's still some human in the loop parts to it. We want to make sure that you can control like what should happen next. And so if we recognize any outdated contact, because our AI model is finding those duplicates, not just based off email, because that's table stakes, but it's taking like the different things with their profiles and combining to make sure we have that perfect golden record. So then when we do that, we can figure out there's multiple tasks, for example, so those things that we can just kind of flag for everybody. And you can decide, if we find that somebody is outdated, how should we update the old record? And then should we create new records too? So that we can just automatically help say, nope, we know that Taft got a new job recently at Iceberg, or whatever else. And then, or Rosalyn, you started 18 months ago, you got that new job. We want to create that record for you so that you don't have to do it yourself. And then if there's any duplicates, we want to make sure too, you can choose what happens, which fields win, who we should merge, which one wins the merge. Just so instead of you having to focus on figuring out these duplicates, you can do more fun things like build different agents for your reps. Like we've been talking about with everybody, how you're doing things with sales enablement to help your team be more efficient versus get bogged down in just outdated data. That's not fun to deal with.
So surfacing the duplicates on the contact level and the account level, and then allowing you to have rules in place to then change that based on new data that it can pull in. So I'm curious, like, I don't pretend to have been in a RevOps role before. Let me ask the RevOps experts, what is this bringing you back to? Are you actively updating the data around at least contact and accounts? And what does that task even look like today? What's your take? And I'll throw it to either one of you, whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, for me, I'm living this right now. So, kind of as Taft alluded to, it's like, okay, fix parts of the data that you need that are high priority, and then you go and, constantly chip away at the other pieces. So having this information available and be able to, again, kind of that next best action, being able to, it's one thing to be able to see the dupes, it's another to be able to have enough information to make a decision, which this is also allowing, and then be able to actually take the action all in one place. I think that's huge.
I know as a previous rep and looking through Salesforce, I would find the duplicates. I would tell my team, I thought I was a pretty good partner for the RevOps team, but the fact that I would still come across them, and it was more I as the rep have to be proactive. If I am being proactive at all, letting the RevOps team know. This is allowing the proactivity. And Taft, I know you were talking about how you built a solution around this. I doubt this goes on the entire breadth of what you focus on, but I'm curious your take on what's your reaction to this? What are you brought back to in maybe a story about how you've worked with a client on this kind of thing?
My initial reaction is I feel like this is accelerating something that Common Room already does really well, which is changing the paradigm, which is consolidating records into the concept of a person. Because Common Room has done this historically. Like, that piece isn't new. I think the leveraging AI to better scan and find and reconcile these various records is just accelerating something they already do well. But we have used Common Room several times, and I like the light bulb moment when someone understands that cleaning your data is less important when there is a data layer that is just people. And this one person might be represented by 2 leads and 3 contacts, but they're all the same person. And Common Room is smart enough to know which of the data in the system represents this person right now. And so then all these records almost become like an audit trail of who this person has worked for and what they've done in the past. And so for me, I don't have a separate story other than I've already used this concept that Common Room has baked in. And so the idea of seeing it being accelerated with AI, and it just gets better because now AI is better at helping you consolidate these into a single record if you want, is really valuable. I actually think this is great. And the human in the loop piece is really easy to overlook. Everyone wants to automate everything, and who wants to eat their vegetables when you can have AI do it for you? The problem is AI does these things poorly and you end up with a mess. And so I like the balance here. I think this is a smart a direction to build in.
I don't know if that was a new quotable moment that you just made for yourself, but I love that because would I have AI eat my vegetables for me? Of course. I love, pizza, hot dogs, etc. So if that's doing it for me, doing the good stuff that needs to be done, then great. I'm golden. Everyone in the chat, I'd love to see if you have any immediate reactions to this, but this is your gift for staying until the final 10 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I highly encourage everyone who is here to go follow Taft and Rosalyn on LinkedIn. Taft posts a lot about his experiences in working with clients and having those hard conversations. And Rosalyn, you've been in the game and building community for a very long time. Everyone, if they're not already, they should be following you and checking out what you do. And I'm sure they'd be open to it. Reach out to both Taft and Rosalyn if you need a RevOps therapy session. I'm sure they would be happy to help. But thank you so much to you, Taft and Rosalyn, so much for your wisdom. This was fantastic, and we clearly got a lot of engagement today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. This was great.
Thanks, everyone. And we just got to hit the leave stage, and then I think it's done.